Okay, so today I am going to be talking about anxiety. This seemed like a good time to talk about it, and really my own experience with anxiety, which I have and I take meds for, and I still have, shining through the meds all the time. And I guess I've always had it, but I didn't realize that I had it because I guess I thought of anxiety as more of a feeling, and I've come to realize more and more that I almost feel like anxiety is just really sort of how my brain operates, along with ADHD and autism, but not maybe in the way that everyone would think of. And that's what I want to explain. But first, because I know that this is different, so I'm just going to mention it. My hair is purple right now. I'm not sure how well you can see it in this light in the camera, but it's just like a one-time washout thing. What is it, that panda? Is it common panda? It's like the hair wax that kept coming up on Facebook. I kept seeing it, so finally I tried it because I like having my hair different colors, but I don't like committing to one color, and so I tried it. And we put it in Sadie's hair before school was canceled for the indefinite future, and it looked really, really cute on her hair because her hair is golden. It's not as obvious on my hair as it is on her hair, obviously, because my hair is a lot darker than her hair, but it's fun, and I like that I can wash it out when I don't want it. Anyways, back to what I'm talking about. Anxiety. Something that I've been realizing more and more. Well, anxiety is something I have spent a lot of time thinking about in the last year, because throughout my life, if you'd asked me if I had anxiety, I would have said no, because I thought of anxiety as panic attacks and a feeling of worry, crushing panic in your chest, and that's not how I usually am. I think I've had maybe 3 panic attacks in my entire life, and they were all after I turned 30. Before that, I had never had a panic attack, and I usually don't feel anxious as a feeling that's in my body. Usually I would tell you that I feel pretty calm, like maybe I feel upset, but I don't have a feeling that I would call anxiety most of the time. I might feel tired, I might feel other things, but just like usually I don't feel depressed, even though I have depression. My depression is usually feeling really, really tired and having a hard time getting out of bed. I don't usually feel something that I would describe as depression a lot of the time when I'm depressed. And maybe that is, for anyone new here, I realize I didn't do the intro before now. Hi, if you're new here. This is kind of late, but my name's Cami and I'm autistic. And I have at least 4 kids who are also autistic, but today I'm talking about me. And I also have ADHD and anxiety. I've been thinking about this anxiety thing more in the midst of this whole corona thing, how right now I don't feel particularly anxious. I read an article by a woman, and she talked about how in emergency situations she was in her element. And that got me thinking about how much I related to that. And I do. I'm gonna go back to some stories I've never talked about here. First, I'll talk a little bit about my anxiety. So I'm super anxious in social situations. I definitely have social anxiety. My mind will stress and stress about going to something that is social, whether it's a school party. No, those aren't things I look forward to, or any type of social engagement. Once I go, I know that I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna enjoy myself, but the build up to it, it's a relief if it's canceled, because just there's this buildup in my head that I'm gonna have to go and I'm gonna have to interact with people. And for me, that takes so many more spoons than anything else I'm gonna do. It takes more spoons than cleaning my entire house. It takes more spoons than just about anything else that I'm gonna have to do. Generally, when things are canceled, I'm relieved. I just dread things that don't involve basically family, or just the routine. If they're routine, they're school, therapy, those I don't think about. Those are part of the routine and they're easy, and I just go through the movements and I don't have to think about them. So that's not hard. It's those social things that are outside our regular everyday routine that will stress me out. And I guess maybe that is part of the way my brain works as a person who's autistic and as a person who also has pretty bad social anxiety. The other part of my brain that I think I now recognize as probably being anxious throughout my life is that as like a little kid, I would come up with all of these different scenarios. Like we'd be driving in the car and I'd be in the back seat and I would be thinking, if I was kidnapped, this is how I would escape. And I would come up with different escape scenarios, and how here I would jump out of the car and I would roll and I would run over there and I would come up with escape routes all the time. And then as I got older, I started plotting how I would survive various apocalyptic situations. Now, I've never been like a major prepper, but I've always had little things put away in case something apocalyptic happened. Even though it's not like I'm expecting it to happen, it's just always been sort of this thing in my head. Like I've always had, not always, but I've had a Pinterest board. I've had a Pinterest board with like bug out bags, and I'm always looking into like, oh, this is what I would need if something happened. Even though I feel like it's not a realistic thing that's probably ever going to happen in my lifetime. It's just this little kernel of anxiety that's always there. Like, you should know what to do in these situations. You should know what to be prepared for. You should have these skills, which is probably why my various interests have shifted over the years from various skills that would be helpful to have. So I have all of these random like homesteading skills that I've taught myself that I felt would be helpful in situations. In case there was ever zero technology, which I realize is somewhat ridiculous, and yet it's just how my brain has, I don't know, eased stress, because I don't really believe that that's how things will ever be, but it's also how my brain works. So anyways, so that's the anxiety that I never thought of as anxiety. So now I'm gonna go back. Well, I'm super nervous in social situations, and I stumble through talking to new people. I overshare and not intending to say awkward things that people may or may not notice, but that I remember 10 years later in the middle of the night that keep me awake. Those are all things that I am incredibly anxious about. Things that don't make me anxious that I haven't talked about here. An example would be, I was driving last year, and I was turning left at this really dangerous intersection. And there was a man, an older man, crossing the street. And I stopped for him. And he crossed in front of me, and the truck next to me didn't see him and accelerated and hit him. And threw him a really, really good distance. And I pulled forward really fast and cut across all the cars that had stopped. And I parked in the car dealership there and jumped out, calling 911 and telling them that there was a man that was hurt really badly. And I ran over. There were all these people already getting out of their cars because everyone had to stop. And everyone was just standing there on their cell phones taking pictures. He was just laying there and no one was doing anything. Now, I was a lifeguard for 8 years, so I went through the training over and over and over again for just basic first aid, first responder, lifeguard training. No one was touching him. He was on the ground with like blood coming out of his ears, and basically he was hurt really badly. And I told them on the phone that I had to go, I was going to help, and they said okay. And I got down, and the two men that were standing there on their phones closest tried to stop me and said don't touch him, and I ignored them and didn't feel, at that point in time I felt completely and perfectly calm, not anxious at all. And I put my hands on either side of his head like I'd been trained to do with my arms, and supported his head and held him there. And 2 police officers got there about 2 minutes later, and they came over and they started doing whatever, I don't even know what they were doing, and said, "You're doing good, ma'am. Just keep holding his head just like that." And he regained consciousness and started fighting us because he couldn't breathe. And in my head the whole time I kept thinking, what if this was your dad or your husband? You would want someone to help him. So I just kept holding his neck, trying to stabilize his neck, because I'd seen how far he'd been thrown, and I was afraid he had some sort of a neck injury. 2 nurses came up and ended up leaving because there was nothing they could do to help. Finally, the ambulance got there, and they kept having me hold his head until they got the backboard, and then one of the guys took over holding his neck, and they got him into the collar and got him on the backboard. And I picked up his groceries because he'd been holding groceries, and got them to the ambulance, and then stayed and gave a statement to the cops. And then I left, and then got in the car and drove home, and then kind of started freaking out a little bit. Not freaking out, but in the car just was like, wow, that was really intense. Still less anxiety provoking for me than going into a social situation. Or the same thing, my dad was an EMT for years, so I grew up at like EMT trainings. I would be a victim a lot. And one day, this was when I was like 16 or 17, after I'd been a lifeguard for a year or two, we came upon an accident that no one was at yet, and we stopped to help. And there was an old lady, and she had other injuries. My dad was stabilizing her head, and he had me stabilize her arm, which was clearly very broken. The paramedics got there and they started doing everything else, and they had me hold her arm for like 20 minutes while they were doing everything else because I was doing okay holding her arm, I guess. And finally someone took over and they took over and splinted her arm. And that sort of thing doesn't freak me out. Situations like that where things are actually, that sort of chaos, emergency situations, those don't cause me to freak out, or even how things are right now. Logically, I'm worried about what's happening with the world, and I'm staying home and I'm keeping our kids home and doing everything we can to prevent the spread of the virus, because I understand that it's dangerous, and I understand that this is an extremely serious situation, and I don't want to make anything worse. I think we all need to do our part to stop this thing. Logically, I understand that this is a scary situation, but it's not this kind of situation that makes my anxiety go through the roof, even though maybe it should be. Like, logically, I understand that this is the sort of situation that should make me freak out, but it doesn't. What makes me freak out is talking to people or emailing people. That's why it takes me so long to email, or why sometimes I never check my emails, because I keep putting them off, which I'm sorry about. It takes me so long to check my emails because I always think I'll do it tonight, and then at nighttime I'm like, I'll do it tomorrow night, and then I start to think, wow, I'm a horrible person. I haven't emailed in so long now. I can't email because I get really anxious about email for some reason, messaging. I get super anxious about that. I know it's weird, but it's just, yeah, it's like, or texts. I'll get a text and I'll think, oh, that makes me anxious if it's not from a certain set of people, and I think I'll text back later, and then I'll start to be like, wow, it's been really long since I got that text. I can't text back now. That would be really weird. They'll wonder why I didn't text back earlier. And now I can't. I know. And so a lot of times, like, I'll make myself respond right away. But when I don't, I get so stressed about it that then it's like I'm frozen and I can't. And that, I guess, sort of basically sums up how my anxiety works. It's so much better for me when I just face it and I get things over with, and it's not really that bad. And logically, I know this, but it's so hard to just do that, to just make those moves, to just make myself face it. And this is me, fully medicated for my anxiety, and so much better than without. Although honestly, I feel like my anxiety meds really fully address my depression and fully treat my depression and make me so much happier and so much better. But I don't know how much they actually help anxiety. I don't know. Paul says that I'm just the most introverted person on the planet that he's ever met. He says he's introverted, and I say that he's a liar. Liar. He says that it's not that he's not introverted, it's just that I am a super introverted person. Is right? Who knows? Anyways, that is a glimpse at my relationship with anxiety, and how in situations that I guess would be intense and anxiety provoking, I imagine for a lot of people, I feel the most calm. But in situations where it's anything social, I am over scrutinizing, overthinking, and just totally stressed. And that is it for today. If you like this video, we'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you just subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.